What is going on, everyone? Welcome into the Brand Partial Show. So let's talk college football. So the playoff rankings are going to be released tonight. They were released last week, and Ohio State comes in at number one. And to be honest, if you ask me, in my opinion, is Ohio State the best team in the country? The answer I'm going to give is no. Ohio State is not the best team in the country because Georgia, to me, I think the last few years we've been trying, I think we've been kind of kidding ourselves a little bit right here. I mean, college football always wants to, college football will never, analysts will never say this. Well, at least I think most of them won't say this. Georgia's still the best team in the country. And I think Georgia, when Georgia wants to turn it on, I don't think anyone, their best, no one's best in the country can beat Georgia's best, I think is the problem. I think that's why Georgia's still the number one team in the country. I think Ohio State's a really good team. They got a strong resume. The hard-fought win at Notre Dame gave them a boost. The win against Penn State. So Ohio State, as far as getting quality wins, Ohio State is right up there. Florida State. That's why I was kind of surprised Florida State's at number 4 because Florida State beat Clemson's not a strong team, but at the time, Clemson was a strong team, so I'm surprised Florida State's not up there. Florida State's still a really strong team. They got playmakers in Coleman, Benson. Travis is playing well at quarterback, so Florida State. But, yeah, Georgia, I think Georgia's best. I don't know if anyone's best can beat Georgia's best. I think that Washington, Georgia is a matchup I really want to get in the playoffs just for pure intrigue. I say intrigue. Usually when I say a matchup's intriguing, usually it ends up a lot of times being a blowout. Like I think that game, like if you just took how Washington's done this year and compared it to how Georgia's done, if you were just like you're just a casual college football fan, your initial reaction would be that would be a close game. But I think when you take a step back and look at it, the way Georgia can play at their best in a championship caliber game like that, I think Georgia could. Maybe they wouldn't blow Washington out, but I think that Georgia would beat them handily. But I think that'd just be an interesting matchup because let's see how a top Pac-12 team, a team that's has a really good young coach, how do they stack up against mighty Georgia, the team that's won the last 2 national champions? It's a Pac-12 hasn't been in the playoffs in a few years. I think the intrigue for a matchup like that, I think it'd be similar to Michigan, Georgia a couple years ago. Just, Michigan, a new team in the playoff. Washington, obviously, they're not a new team in the playoff, but I think the intrigue for that matchup, obviously, all hypothetical at that point. I think the intrigue for that matchup would be, would certainly be there. But yeah, I think so. I would have Georgia 1. I think Ohio State's really good. I think honestly I'd put Michigan 2. I think Florida State 3. I think I'd have Ohio State at 4. But I think Ohio State, good strong team. Keep reiterating that. Really, it's nothing against Ohio State. I think just the top 4. I think you can have in a bunch of different orders. But I think. Or I think 2 through 4 you could are kind of interchangeable, but I think Georgia really certainly is earned the nod to be number 1 just based off. People say what they did the past few years shouldn't really have any effect on what they've done, but I think even though things change within a year span, I think in the case of Georgia things haven't really changed much. I think Georgia's still that dominant a team, and I think they do have the right to be number 1. I mean, they still are undefeated too. They've had some close games, but they've done what they've needed to do, including getting a strong win against Florida without Brock Bowers, who is their best player on their team, regardless of offense or defense. So Oregon sits at 6. And Oregon's an interesting team because Oregon's that team where they're just playing really high-level football, and they're a team that I'm sure no one really wants to play, or no one would want to play in a championship game. I think what's interesting about Oregon, they're that team in the before the season starts where I'm like, okay, I'm trying to decide who's going to win the Pac-12, and I went with USC, but Washington, I was like, dang, I should have picked Washington, but Oregon was that team where I'm like, especially since I watched them play early on, Oregon's that team where I'm like, man, I was high on Washington, USC. And I know it's a few weeks in. It's kind of it's not as fun to predict once you see a team play a few weeks in. But I'm thinking like, maybe Oregon, I think was that team that I should have picked to win the Pac-12, and that I should have knew all along, based on what I've seen in a few weeks, that they were that good of a team. So I think that's what I was a little disappointed in in myself, not realizing that, Oregon had a chance to do something special. But I think the question I had with Oregon is, it's year 2 of Dan Lanning. Like, I think the question I had was, is it, I thought it was going to take, is it going to take multiple years for Dan Lanning to get it rolling? It appears in year 2, he's got things going. The recruiting, they're doing so well in recruiting. He's a guy that's shown that he can really, build up the line of scrimmage, offense and defensively. They've ran the ball effectively. Bucky Irving and then Bo Nix has just played outstanding. Bo Nix making a case to be one of the top 3 draft pick, maybe the 2nd overall pick behind Caleb Williams. So yeah, Bo Nix played phenomenal. He certainly is quite a talent at the quarterback position. Incredible athlete, a guy that's gotten better. It seems like better and better. Struggled early on last year, especially in that week 1 game against Georgia, but it's just, continued to improve and really just looks awesome out there, and really gives them a chance in almost any game. By the way, he can extend and make plays, and got a really strong arm. Yeah, Texas, Alabama both sit with 1 loss. Texas at 7 ahead of Alabama. I think obviously that's just because Texas won that over the head-to-head matchup. Yeah, Oklahoma now with 2 losses. It'll be interesting to see how far they drop. Oklahoma, man, it's really too bad. I was really talking up Oklahoma, and then they had that 2nd loss. I think that really hurts. Oklahoma, they were doing, with that 1 loss just to Texas, that was kind of giving them, seemed like there was a lot of hope, a lot of buzz from Oklahoma. But with that 2nd loss, that's really just kind of tough now. But yeah, Oklahoma's still a good team. Got a good quarterback. They're well coached. I think they have a chance to really to win out, or if not win out, really still have a finish strong and really build some momentum next year, and really try to do something next year. But yeah, Oklahoma is still a really good team. Florida State. I really like Florida State. Keon Coleman, Benson. They got playmakers. Mike Norvell really just showing how good of a coach he really is. He's just done a fantastic job with this team this year. His play calling's been outstanding. But yeah, I think Ohio State, Michigan are going to play. That's going to settle that. Alabama's still kind of just hanging around there with 1 loss. I think Alabama's going to have a really strong case to continue to win and do something this year. Yeah, Penn State. Penn State's still not out of it with 1 loss. They have their opportunities. They're gonna play Michigan Saturday. If they get a win there, then that could really propel them and build some momentum. But yeah, Michigan looks strong too, sitting at number 2. Yeah, Michigan, still a really good team, really strong showing against Purdue. They have an opportunity to continue to win and build their resume. They're going to have their opportunity this Saturday against Penn State, and then they're going to have their chances against Ohio State too. So really looking to see what Michigan does. Michigan, one of the best teams in college football, and they got a chance. I know they got the sign stealing scandal going on, but Michigan opportunity to get a big win against Penn State, and they got an opportunity to get another win against Ohio State, win the Big Ten, and get back to the playoff. But yeah, I watch Georgia, and Georgia just, when they turn it on, it really is fun to watch, to see how, dominant they can be. I think Florida, the last 2 years against Florida have been kind of the similar games. They're, Florida looked like they had hope early, but then Georgia just, when they wanted to put the pedal to the metal, they really could just, steamroll them. And I think, one of you Georgia fans didn't agree, but I think I'm not like overly impressed with Carson Beck at quarterback, but I think Carson Beck certainly is good enough to win them some games. I think he's got good enough arm strength. I think he distributes the ball well. Yeah, I think he is good enough to really do some nice things for Georgia. So, yeah, I think he's good enough, even though I'm not a huge fan of his game overall. I think Carson Beck does put him in a position to really to win a lot of games and to get him that three-peat. But yeah, so let's talk more about like what I've seen from Ohio State this year. So Ohio State, I think same thing with Carson Beck. I'm not blown away by Kyle McCord. I think he can play. I think he's athletic. I think he's a guy that can make the necessary throws to consistently move the chains and sustain drives. But I don't watch Kyle McCord, and I don't really get blown away by any performance he's put together this year. But I think that he'll be a good quarterback for him, not only this year but in the future. But yeah, it's a guy that can play high level football. He's proven that he can win some key games against Penn State, Notre Dame now. So yeah, McCord, a good quarterback overall, and he does have some talent around him in Travion Henderson and Marvin Harrison. Harrison, after a little bit of a slower start, has appeared to be getting things going now, and the Ohio State defense has really improved. I think if there's one thing that they can really be optimistic about, they can help them beat Michigan, is their defense is improving. Jim Knowles, credit him, credit Ryan Day, this defense, even though last year they were really making it known that they were improved. I think, that was kind of they still got exposed against Michigan and Georgia. And then this year, they're making it appears they're improved and they're making the emphasis that they're improving. But I guess against the Michigan or in the playoffs, we will really see how much, against really good offenses, we'll see how much the Ohio State defense really has taken steps to continue to improve. Because in the Michigan game, you saw, the first half, their defense played okay, but in the second half, you really saw they kind of got worn down. You saw them, the Michigan game, they were almost arrogant about, their coverage. They just, they were just daring Michigan to throw the ball deep, and McCarthy, made the throws. Some of them were so wide open, but that's the thing. I think this year's matchup, Michigan, Ohio State, I think Knowles will do a little bit more creative things. They're not going to be as arrogant about trying to stop the run and putting everyone in the box, even though some teams, did that to Michigan and had some success. Ohio State did it, and it worked a little bit in the first half, but even late in the second half and or late in the first half and in the second half, Michigan made some throws, and they made some with everyone in the box. Edwards had a couple of runs that just where he exploded and made big plays. But yeah, I love Washington this year. Michael Penix is awesome. I think just Washington's kind of got that team. They have just a team that's kind of got the heart of a champion. They've got talent at receiver. I think Rome Odunze, I think, is going to be a first-round receiver. I think he's one of the best wide receivers in this draft class. Braylon Trice, really good defensively. Edefan Olafosho is a guy I always forget about. He's a really good player. So yeah, college football, or Washington has some really teams I really like. LSU, it's too bad they got that third loss now. Really out of it. I really thought they had a chance to beat Bama. But Alabama, you kind of wonder about Alabama right now. Is Alabama, it's kind of hard to get a read on Alabama at this point. Obviously they had the one loss, but you feel with Alabama, they have this could be a national title team, but I think you're still kind of digging and searching for the evidence that they can be, if that makes sense. I think, Milroe can be up and down at times. The offense it's been good, but it hasn't been great. The defense has been good, but it hasn't been great. Nick Saban, a little older. Now it's been a few years since they've won a national title. Failed last year to reach the SEC championship. So I think, there's a lot of things. Alabama are still a really good football team, but I think there's just a lot of questions up until this point to give them to definitively say this is a national championship caliber team. But yeah, Nick Saban, can he still coach? Absolutely. And is this still a really good Alabama football team nonetheless? Yes, it is. But yeah, I think, that game against LSU, I think, was a key win, because I think if Alabama were to lose that game, I think there would be, obviously Brian Kelly getting a lot of questions, because they, all play any hopes of getting to the playoff were down the drain after that loss. But I think that, I think Nick Saban would have got as many questions as Brian Kelly for losing that game, just because that was a game where, now it's, if you lose that, then man, 2 losses in a row to Brian Kelly, 2 losses in a row to LSU. Appears you're probably not going back to the SEC championship game, even though you still could. And it appears, and then that with 2 losses, you could have eliminated yourself again from the playoffs in November. So I think Alabama not only getting that win, not just getting that win, but the way they played. They really controlled the line of scrimmage, even though that wasn't necessarily a tall task against an LSU defensive line that's really struggled. But also, yeah, Milroe was so effective. The receivers making plays. The defense was strong for the most part, and they really buckled down in the second half. Dallas Turner performing at a high level, looking like one of the top edge rushers for next year's draft. So just a lot of things really working in Alabama's favor in that game, and or a lot of things. They really did a lot of things well in that game, and credit this coaching staff, and credit Alabama for getting that win. But yeah, Alabama, strong secondary again. Malachi Moore, Kool-Aid McKinstry. I like watching Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid just really competes. Appears he's going to be the top corner off the board for next year's draft. He's just really good in coverage, a good tackler, just a savvy player, and at this point now a veteran in year 3 who has a lot of experience playing for the Crimson Tide. So yeah, let's talk about USC falling apart. So USC, I think when you look at USC, I think obviously I think it's safe to say about Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch, I think it's fair to say at this point they're just not very good defensive minds. They're just very poor. They have very poor defensive schemes. They really don't know what they're doing as far as that side of the ball is concerned. You look at USC on paper, the reason I picked them to win the Pac-12, I thought that, Grinch and Lincoln Riley, I think towards the end of the Oklahoma tenure, they had showed enough that they could at least be competent defensively. And I thought combining that with, guys like Muhammad, Mason Cobb, some of these transfers they brought in, Keon Barnes, I thought combining that with at least the competence they had showed, USC could at least put out a good defense. But it appears I was wrong. And USC really performing at a poor level defensively, just not being able to stop people. Once again, not being like a physical, feared defense that can really, be stout against the run, can rush the passers. So once again, Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch, and this defense failing, and their offense even being shaky at times too. So, but I've kind of I don't know if I made this point on here for talking to other people. USC is just kind of a tough place to win. Like I said, it's not. You kind of have to find some middle ground when you're assessing how tough it is. It's not the toughest job in sports, but it's not the toughest job in college football, but it's a tough job to say the least, just because the expectations are so high. You can't dominate the city of Los Angeles like you used to, because you got UCLA, Oregon, Washington. Now these schools are able to get guys from the state of California. So you can't dominate the Los Angeles area and dominate California like you did under Pete Carroll. So, and for Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch, at this point in their careers, if it hasn't clicked for them defensively, as far as, good defensive schemes and knowing how to put guys in the right position and developing key transfers, if it hasn't clicked at this point, when is it ever going to click? So I think, with that being said, that's kind of the case for, I guess, the more pessimistic takes about the Lincoln Riley era. But if you want to stay optimistic about the Lincoln Riley era at USC, these first 2 years, Caleb Williams is awesome. They found some really good receivers. Their offensive line's been solid. They're going to have, under Lincoln Riley, they're always going to have guys drafted offensively. So, yeah, USC and Lincoln Riley and USC has really done, they've done some nice things offensively, to say the least. This has not been a complete failure at USC. It's been a disappointment, but yeah, USC, been able to put up points, develop an NFL quarterback who's going to be the number one overall pick, and then develop players, and have players around him. So not all doom and gloom in USC, but a disappointing season nonetheless. And the main question for USC, are they going to be able to figure out the defense here? And if so, can they figure it out next year? Because next year it's going to be a tall task heading to the Big Ten. It's going to be, maybe not a whole lot tougher, but, a little bit tougher too. You're going to have to play Michigan now, Ohio State, and you'll still have to play some of your old Pac-12 foes. So it's not going to be easy, not going to get easier for USC. Well, hopefully Lincoln Riley can figure it out. If not this year, hopefully he can figure it out next year. But yeah, the SEC interesting this year. Alabama, you'd love to see. We might be getting an Alabama-Georgia SEC championship once again. That's a matchup that we did not. We got to see twice. 2 years ago is a matchup we did not get to see at all last year. So we'll get to. We'll see if that happens this year. That will be a fun showdown. Yeah, Ole Miss quietly too had a really nice season as well, or still having a really nice season. They've got some nice wins too. The only loss coming to Bama. Some nice wins over LSU, recent win over Texas A&M. So yeah, credit Ole Miss. Ole Miss has had a nice season. Lane Kiffin done a really good job this season. Lane Kiffin still, I guess not quietly, but somewhat low key has done a really good job of building a strong Ole Miss program. You saw at Florida Atlantic. You've seen other places. How good of a job Lane Kiffin can do. What he can really do. In any program, USC, he had a nice season. Florida Atlantic, he had a nice season. Now, Ole Miss, he's going to put together a couple strings of really nice seasons back to back, at least 9-win seasons for him. So, yeah, Lane Kiffin, still a good coach, good offensive mind. Credit what Ole Miss has done. He's recruited pretty well too. Judkins, the running back, and the defense has been okay too. So yeah, Lane Kiffin, is a good football coach nonetheless, and it's cool to see his team having success. So, yeah, these are years. I think Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin, two kind of the same guys that have just kind of taken some heat because they don't win enough. But Sarkisian really proving a lot of people wrong this year, getting the win over Alabama and just holding on to one loss. Now we'll see what happens. Hopefully Texas. We'll see if Texas can win out. But I think it's crazy as we sit right now. It's kind of crazy that we have all these teams. We got 5 teams 9-0 right now. That is, and then Oregon with the one loss kind of creeping there right behind. It's rare that we have 5 teams 9-0 like this. Like, could all 5? Well, obviously, not all 5 will finish 9-0 because Alabama and Michigan are going to have to play each other. But if we have 4 teams undefeated, that will just add to the intrigue. Like, say Michigan beats Ohio State and they're undefeated. You got Michigan, potentially Georgia undefeated, Washington undefeated, and Florida State. Say if it is those 4 teams in the playoff all undefeated, that's just really going to help the intrigue for the playoffs. To say, we got 4 undefeated teams in the playoffs. I think that's going to be that would be something. But yeah, Penn State. So let's preview Penn State, Michigan. So I guess basically my prediction would be I think Michigan's going to win. I think Michigan's the better team. I obviously have taken in that it is at Penn State. Penn State, not an easy place to win. Obviously, Michigan. If anyone knows that the last few years, it's Michigan. I know Michigan. Did Michigan win the last time they went there? Yeah, Michigan has won the last time they were there in 2021, but they obviously experienced some lows there. 2019 losing there, 2017 they got destroyed there. So Michigan understands, how tough. None of the players on the team now, but Michigan, Jim Harbaugh, I guess, and some of the staff realizes, and the fans realize how tough it is to get wins at Penn State. But I think, this game, I don't think, Michigan pounced on Penn State last year. I don't think it's going to be that type of game this year, but I think Michigan's going to win. I think it'll be a little closer than last year when Michigan just ran the ball all over them. I was at the game. Michigan just, really kind of had their way up front. I think Penn State is more physical this year. I think Penn State's just a better overall team under Drew Aller at quarterback, and they're the talent they've added in the transfer portal. I think Penn State's a better team, but I think Michigan does get it done, and they do get that needed win, or they do get that win to go to 9-0, or what would it be, 9-0 or 10-0. I think Michigan does get it done against Penn State, even though I think Penn State keeps it competitive. But yeah, this should be a good one. Fox Big Noon. Joel Klatt, Gus Johnson on the call. That always adds a little extra excitement. It gives it a real, big time Big Ten game feel. So, yeah, I think Michigan gets it done. But yeah, Penn State. Penn State is under James Franklin. No, they're obviously not out of the mix right now, and they get this win against Michigan. They can get right back in the thick of things in the Big Ten, and they're certainly not eliminated from playoff contention as we sit right now with one loss. So, yeah, keep an eye on this one closely. This one's going to have implications of the playoffs, but most people, I think, believe Michigan's going to win, but you can't count Penn State out in this game, and especially not at home. Yeah, so Missouri too quietly had a really nice year. Brady Cook, that quarterback's a really good quarterback. Eli Drinkwitz has done a really nice job at Missouri. I think Missouri is one of those programs where it's just like they tend to just find ways to be good. Like under that Gary Pinkel guy, it seemed like they just there'd be seasons they kind of come out of nowhere and they're just really strong. I remember 2010 they upset Oklahoma when Oklahoma was number 1 in the country. So Missouri, seems like they just kind of have some seasons where they can just, come out of nowhere and really be, a strong team and get some wins, get some upset wins, and be really competitive. So it seems like that's one of those years for Missouri, and Drinkwitz is one of those coaches who's just going to have this program competitive for a long time and putting people really on notice. Kansas too had a nice year too. Obviously, the upset over Oklahoma was big, but yeah, Kansas too appears like they're a team who bad for a long time, but now is going to make put down their mark that they are going to be a strong program that they're going to be not once again, but be a strong program and be competitive and not go anywhere. Louisville 7-1 too. Notre Dame with 3 losses too, still a strong team. The loss to Clemson kind of inexcusable. Yeah, I can't wait. Playoffs is going to be super exciting. Hopefully some new teams this year. That's what everyone wants to see. Some new teams out there. Can Texas with 1 loss, can they get back in the thick of things? Yeah, I think it's real. It's gonna be real interesting. It'll be real exciting. And I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, I mean, LSU been pretty disappointing this year, to be honest. I was not expecting their defense to really fall apart like that. They've really just been, um, a team that's really prided themselves on having a tough, competitive defense, strong secondaries for so long. It's really disappointing that they really that the defense has been so poor. Not only against the run, not only giving up points, but just not being able to rush the passer, especially when you got guys like Harold Perkins, Mason Smith. So LSU, a team that's really been a letdown so far this season. Even though Brian Kelly, still a good coach, LSU still a strong program. It just hasn't been. The season just hasn't gone the way people had hoped. You know, people forget. LSU was a preseason top 5 team, and now they are, as at this point in early November, are eliminated from the college football playoff. At least it appears so. With 3 losses. It's gonna be really hard to get in, obviously, especially with like a touchdown 5 teams that are 9-0 too. It'll be really tough for them to get in. But yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna wrap with that, guys. Thanks for tuning into the Brand Partial Show. Stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show. Till next time, peace.